This is Fran.
And Kristen.
We are group number 5, and our presentation is on reading and writing within visual perception.
The article I read is titled The Relationship Between Handwriting, Reading, Fine Motor, and Visual Motor Skills in Kindergartners. As a former kindergarten teacher and a current pre-K teacher, I thoroughly enjoyed reading this article and found it very interesting. The study had participants of 48 kindergartners in Iowa. It talked about how writing is a critical life skill. However, many students do not fare well in this area. A possible cause for this could be because teachers are not adequately prepared to teach handwriting. Within the study, teachers were surveyed, and only 12% reported that they had any college-level courses that prepared them to teach handwriting. As I stated before, I'm currently a pre-K teacher. I used to teach kindergarten, so I can attest to this myself. Throughout my college career, I did not have a single course that taught me how to teach handwriting. Within the study, it's talked about that research has shown that name writing is an indicator to later reading ability. It explained that when teaching children letters, you should use their name to start with. And as a teacher, that is something that I do. When you use a child's name to teach them the letters in their name or how to write the letters in their name, this makes a personal connection. And when a personal connection is made, it aids in retention and later recall. Visual stimuli and perception is also very important in reading and writing. Some lowercase letters, such as B and D, P and Q, are visually different and require one to process this difference before writing or reading the letter. Within the study, assessment measures were done to identify kindergarten students who were at risk for reading problems. This was then compared to measures to assess handwriting. Students who were at risk for reading also scored low on the handwriting assessment. In conclusion, this study found significant correlations among reading, writing, visual, motor, and fine motor skills for kindergartners.
Okay, the name of my article is Dynamic Visual Perception and Reading Development in Chinese School Children. This study looked at how visual perception can influence the development of reading skills. There's an area in the brain called the magnocellular pathway, which I will refer to as the M cells pathway. And if there are some deficits along that pathway, then that can lead to deficits in learning to read and write and form words and everything. The Chinese use a writing system called logographic, and they rely more on a visual orthographic process in reading and writing. There were 2 experiments in this study. Experiment 1 was conducted to examine whether Chinese dyslexic children have the same deficits in detecting coherent motion as their English student counterparts. If they do have these deficits in the M cells pathway, they show a reduced sensitivity to dynamic coherent motion compared with the control group in the study. There were 27 children who had dyslexia in the study and 27 without. They were given a variety of reading tests where they had to read 2-character Chinese words as quickly and accurately as they could. Another test that they were administered, they had to take dictation of 2-character words. There was also a vocabulary test, a reading fluency test, and a written vocabulary test, and a visual perception task. In the visual perception task, they were required to, in the motion detection part of this particular task, they were required to determine from a screen that they were looking at which dots on the screen were moving. And then the other part of that particular task had dots that, it was called a static visual pattern, which meant that the dots did not move, but some of them were in a pattern, and they had to be able to distinguish which dots were in a pattern. Results of this study showed that the dyslexic children had significant deficits in all of the reading-related tests. Their deficits were higher whenever they had to determine which of the moving dots were actually moving. And this dissociation between their performance and the static visual perception suggests that they may have deficits in their M cells pathway. In the second experiment, there were 100 fifth grade children who participated. Again, they were given a battery of linguistic and visual perception tests. And the results of this these particular tests in this experiment were that perceptual tasks that do not rely on the M cells pathway do not tap into processes involved in reading. In my experience as a teacher thus far with reading, I certainly agree that reading has an effect on the ability to be able to write. Recognizing letters, putting those letters together to make words, and of course being able to write those words. As far as a schema with Chinese students, I've never had a student from that particular nationality, and I have honestly never given it any thought. But I did find that this was interesting, and particularly that area in the brain that they've identified that can be correlated, if there are deficits there, can be correlated to deficits in reading and writing. Thank you.